Hey everyone, as always, Dylan Miller Prospecting, and today I am making this video to update and warn everyone about Big Texas prospecting. But before I do that, I do need to tell you this disclaimer. The opinions or things I say in this video are just that, my opinion. While some things I may talk about might be facts, viewers should do their own research before coming to a conclusion and should take this video as just my opinion and not as facts unless you have verified them yourselves. And now that the disclaimer is all done, let's get onto this video. I know a lot of people might not like this video or things I'm going to say about George and Big Texas prospecting, but I decided when I first started this channel that I would always focus on making videos that are honest and can help others regardless if anyone liked them or not. And I've continued that throughout my years, whether that be helping people find great new Paydirts or telling you about a seller I think you should avoid, and in this case, it's Big Texas prospecting. Now let me make this very clear. I like George and I think he's a really nice guy, and last year I had his website Big Texas Prospecting in my top 10. Now though, I feel the need to make this warning video for any of his customers or Patreon members, or for those people who might have bought into one of his raffles. If you are owed Paydirt by Big Texas Prospecting, I highly suggest you file a chargeback with your bank, credit card, PayPal, or however you paid for your Paydirt before it gets too late. If you are owed Patreon tier rewards, I suggest you end your membership and find another channel to support. There are a ton of wonderful channels out there that have Patreon, and they would love to have you as their new member. So support someone that will actually ship you out your rewards. If you entered one of his raffles or rodeos and never received your prize, well, sadly, there really is nothing you can do about it except for maybe make a post below so no one else falls for one of these rodeos or raffles and never get their prize as well. Now, as some of you might have noticed, George, the owner of Big Texas Prospecting, has not been shipping Paydirt or shipping Patreon tier rewards, posting on YouTube or social media. He hasn't been answering any emails or calls, and the reason for that is because he was arrested right around May 14th for DUI, his third offense. And as far as I know, he's still not been able to make bond, so he is currently unable to ship Paydirt or anything due to his incarceration. However, George's problems with shipping started way before that, and that's why I removed him from my top 10 on my website a few months ago. It is also why I'm making this video, and I'm going to break down all of the problems with his Paydirt, Patreon, and rodeos. Since August of last year, George has been at least a month late shipping out Paydirt. He has made excuse after excuse, but month after month, nothing changed, and he never started shipping Paydirt in a timely manner. In my opinion, he was floating gold. In other words, he was waiting on new orders so he could buy gold to fulfill old orders. The reason I think this is because on 12/8/2023, he posted this up here, where he says he can't fulfill orders because his gold is lost in the mail, which essentially means he sold Paydirt he didn't actually have gold for. This is a giant red flag or warning to anyone to not buy from a particular seller. It is just a disaster waiting to happen like it currently has, which again is why I warn everyone, if a seller hasn't shipped your product within 30 days, file a chargeback immediately, because they are either never going to send you your Paydirt or they're waiting on someone else's order so they can afford to buy your gold. You should never buy Paydirt from a seller who doesn't actually have any gold in stock, which I don't believe George did on most of his orders. Sadly, while George is a nice guy, I think he was a horrible business owner and never seemed to be able to focus on what he needed to focus on. And that's the three basics, which is have a product, sell that product, and then ship the product. In my opinion, George wanted to be a Paydirt rock star, where he would give away more stuff than he could afford to, from hats to t-shirts to even bags of Paydirt. He just wanted to be liked and a star of the community, but sadly I think it came at the expense of his customers. I have heard through the grapevine that George plans on continuing his Paydirt selling and catching up on his past due orders as soon as he gets out of jail. But honestly, if he couldn't fulfill orders before he was arrested, how is he going to fulfill orders now? Or is he going to just start doing live shows or rodeos and try to get new orders in so he can buy gold for his old orders, starting the same process he has been doing for months now that he has failed? Now for Patreon members, this one is a lot tougher to talk about because I know a lot of people are going to say they joined his Patreon page to support him. So if he gets behind on Patreon awards, so what? They still just want to support him. Well, the problem is not everyone feels that way, and this can cause not only problems for them, but Patreon as a whole and other people who use Patreon. Again, since August, George has made excuse after excuse on why he couldn't ship out tier rewards. But anyone looking at some of his tiers would have seen a giant red flag warning you something was amiss. He had a $40 tier where he guaranteed a half a gram of gold. With gold being $75 a gram, it means after Patreon fees, shipping, supplies, and the gold, George was in a best case scenario breaking even, but in reality was probably losing a few pennies on every single member. Which makes you wonder, why would he have a tier he was losing money on? Again, a huge red flag, unless he never planned on shipping those tier rewards or planned on floating the gold on those members as well, waiting for their new membership dues to pay for the previous members' dues. On 4/6/24, George made this post on Patreon. As you can see, he gave people an option of either being caught up on rewards or getting a huge box of dirt. Several people contacted me and told me George was 2, 3, and even some cases 4 months behind on rewards, which means they were owed 1 to 2 grams of gold in Paydirt. They all told me they went with the $40 box just to be done with it, and guess how much gold was in those boxes? Nothing, not even one speck. To make it worse, in at least one of those cases, George told the person that they had to pay for the shipping. So not only were they out the money, the gold for all those tier rewards and the months that they paid into his Patreon, they also had to pay another $25 for a box of dirt with no gold. That's not even talking about the members who decided to just be caught up on they were owed. From what I've heard, not all of them were caught up before George was incarcerated, and I don't even know if any of them were. Maybe some were, maybe some of his favorite members were, but not everyone was caught up from my information. Now again, some people might say, well, you should just support him and not do it for the rewards. Well, if that is the case, then George shouldn't offer rewards, since it's not a requirement. In fact, most people who have a Patreon page don't give rewards. Some do, but most don't. The real problem is those members who are upset will either complain to Patreon or file chargebacks to Patreon, and Patreon is not going to want upset users not getting rewards. This has happened before, where a Paydirt reviewer was promising all kinds of wonderful things and never produced them. It caused Patreon to crack down, change its terms of service, and threaten other Patreon members of removal simply for offering rewards. So while you may want to support George with no prizes, others may want those rewards. And when they don't get them and complain, it may ruin Patreon for everyone. So if you are a Patreon member who wants the rewards, then I suggest you find someone else to support. If you're okay not getting Patreon rewards, then by all means continue to support George, but maybe convince him to end rewards if he's not going to ship them. I'm not even going to get into the side hustle he had of selling additional chances to win on his monthly Patreon giveaway. Well, actually, I am, but I will cover that in my next topic. And lastly, let's talk about the big Texas rodeos. I always knew George did giveaways to give back to his Patreon members. Almost everyone who does give rewards on Patreon does this, me included. What I didn't know was that later on he started letting people buy extra spots in his monthly giveaway, and he started calling them rodeos. However, what they really were illegal raffles. Giving stuff away to reward people who support you is perfectly legal, and it's a great way to thank those people who give Patreon creators a way to do what they love, whether it's making videos or even making Paydirt. It's just a way to thank them. However, when you start selling entries to that giveaway, not only is it illegal, but it's also a huge red flag. There's a reason raffles are usually highly regulated. It's because when people start paying for stuff and now the person holding the raffle is going to make a profit, it gives them incentive to cheat, lie, manipulate, or rig the outcome of the raffle. Now, while I have no proof George did any of those things based on his last rodeo, I do have some suspicions. When George did his last raffle, it was 400 spots at $5 a spot. So in total, $2,000 was to be collected. And the reward, some gold, nuggets, Paydirts, t-shirts, etc., came to about $1,500 in prizes, meaning that George was going to make approximately $500 in profit. He did say multiple times that any profits would be donated to a charity, as he said in his previous rodeo. Yet not once did he say which charity. Even after the rodeo was completed and the one before it, he never showed proof or mentioned that charity again. So my guess is that charity was his pocket. But it gets even worse than that. Not only was he selling raffle tickets to make a profit, he didn't even have the prizes when he started the raffle. Well, the three biggest ones. He was raffling off 2 5-gram nuggets and a 4-gram nugget, which he did not own or hadn't paid for. Asking a gold dealer to hold 3 nuggets for you for the future payment is not ownership. What it is another huge red flag. I confronted George about this on 4/29/24 during one of his live shows, and he swore he paid for them and that I was just full of it. And he told me to ask the dealer, ask the dealer. And while I didn't have to ask the dealer, I did. And guess what? He had not paid for those nuggets. He was raffling off spots he did not own prizes for. Again, a huge red flag. And from there, it keeps going downhill. I know of at least one person who bought 10 spots and was never even put on the board. So it's obvious he oversold the board, which means he only increased his profits and took away the chance for some people to win. Another red flag. Looking back through Big Texas Prospecting's Patreon page, he turned his Patreon giveaways into profit-making raffles, and they just grew and grew and grew, which again should make everyone ask, if he was selling Paydirt for a profit and making profits on raffles, why was he never shipping anything out in less than a month? And not shipping out tier rewards, even though he was making a profit on his Patreon giveaways? Oh, just a ton of red flags. To summarize all this, Big Texas Prospecting is just a giant red flag and isn't worth the trouble when they have so many better Paydirt sellers out there who actually ship out their Paydirt and don't need to hold raffles to try and make a profit so they can buy gold to fulfill your order even though you paid for your order. While he is closed now, he may come back, and I just want to warn everyone. I also want to say something to anyone who says he's such a nice guy, or something to that nature. Prisons are full of con men who everyone liked and thought was nice. Well, until they got ripped off. Now, I'm not saying George is a con man, but the red flags are worrisome. Also, think about this. We all have a Paydirt seller who we just don't like, who we despise, and we think are crooks. Well, what if they were a nice person? Does that now justify anything? Will you now like their Paydirt? No, probably not. I wouldn't. Being nice does not make a wrong right, and the way George at Big Texas Prospecting has been operating is just wrong. And again, they have so many better sellers out there. You can go check out my top 10 list over at millerprospecting.com. But that's going to be it. Thanks for watching. Happy panning. And if you're not already a subscriber, think about hitting the subscribe button below.